guys are going to go first. Or you want to, we'll just switch.
Yeah, because
Good
once you
afternoon,
start, you're not
everyone. I
stopping.
think we're set to start. I'm Allison Christopher. I'm the town social worker for Westford, and I'm so glad to see so many people turning out for our Affordable Housing Forum. This is such an important topic in our offices here, and I know an important topic for many people seeking housing and trying to stay in this general area. So today we're very lucky to have David Hedison here, who is the Executive Director of the Chelmsford Housing Authority. He has a wide range over many years of, I don't want to say many years because that makes you sound old, David,
No,
but
decades.
a wide range of experience in state funded housing, federally funded housing, housing development, basically any affordable housing issue that you have a question about. We think that David will be able to answer it. So we're very happy to have him here.
No pressure.
We also have Rebecca Cheney and Jeff Morissette from the Westford Land Use Management Department, and they will be here to answer questions specific to developments coming to Westford. We had planned on having Lisa Larrabee from the Westford Housing Authority here, but unfortunately she had to cancel late in the planning. So David is able to speak to those same issues where he administers state-funded housing in Chelmsford as well. So I don't think you'll be missing out on too much information. If you have any questions specific to Lisa, we can take those down for you and get back to you after the forum is over. So you have a lot of handouts. The speakers will be taking questions throughout so that if you have a question, you can raise your hand and hopefully have it answered before we've moved on to another topic and people may forget what they had wanted to ask about. So thanks to WestfordCAT for being here to film this for folks who couldn't attend, and I will turn it over to David.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Hedison. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for the rest of the team here today. So I'm David Hedison. I'm the director of the Chelmsford Housing Authority, and I have been with the Chelmsford Housing Authority since I was 16 years old, and that's not a joke. So I've been doing this for 32 years. It's something I love. It's something I feel passionate about. When I was in high school, I started working at the Chelmsford Housing Authority main office, and I never thought I would have a career in this industry. But I had a woman whose name was Bertha. Bertha every Tuesday would go for her 2 appointments, the 2 most important appointments. Bertha would leave to get her hair done and get her groceries. And she would always stop by and talk to me. And that interaction with Bertha, an immigrant, a wife of a veteran, a woman of modest means, changed my life and made me want to stay with the Chelmsford Housing Authority. So today, my goal today is to share with you the different options that are available for affordable housing, talk to you about the differences in housing that exist, and answer questions that you may have. Now, just to give you a little more background about Chelmsford Housing Authority. Chelmsford Housing Authority, like Westford Housing Authority, has state public housing. So over on Tadmick Road, that is state public housing. And over on the other address, Lisa's not here to tell me, close, is it?
Church and Cross.
Church and Cross, that's state public housing. Chelmsford has that as well. So when I talk about state public housing, whether it's Westford, whether it's Chelmsford, whether it's somewhere in Cape Cod or Western Mass, we all have to operate under the same state rules, regulations, preferences, and priorities. Chelmsford also has additional resources that Westford does not. About 25 years ago, the Chelmsford Housing Authority started receiving additional funds from the federal government. And we have about 700 vouchers that help you pay your rent in the private market. So, because I love Westford, the Chelmsford Housing Authority gives local preference for this program, not only to Chelmsford residents, but we also give preference to Westford residents. So you're not alone. So you're able to access those federal resources operated by our office. Okay, I feel like this topic of affordable housing, it's not an easy one to digest. Usually I'm faced with one senior or their child at the window saying my mother needs housing, and I have to go through the 20 questions of, okay, do I assume she's over 62 and offend her? Or do I ask her age? Oh, I don't do that either. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple things first. So let's talk about Westford and Chelmsford. We have state public housing. State public housing, we're talking age 62 and over, okay? So anytime anyone is interested in applying and living in state public housing, you will be paying 30% of your income, and you're going to be on a waiting list. Now, state public housing requires that we, one, look at emergencies first. Emergencies could be, Mary was burnt out of her house. Thankfully, we don't have that many fires in Westford or Chelmsford or in this area. Mary could have moved in with her children, and her son or daughter could be abusing her. It happens. 3, Mary, her husband passed away. She didn't maybe manage her finances so well. She's being foreclosed on, is losing her home. Another emergency. So emergencies come up, and it's our responsibility to, one, help emergencies. And the order of that is local, veteran, emergency. So when we look on our waiting lists, the first person we're going to take is local, emergency, veteran. If you're lucky to have all 3, I know you don't want an emergency, but the reality is that would be your shortest wait time. After that, veteran emergency. So a veteran who's living out in Worcester could apply. If they're an emergency and a veteran, they're going to be offered next. After that, emergency. So we have to clear out local veteran emergencies. Then we go to veteran emergencies. Then we go to emergencies. When an emergency happens, like today, I could tell you, I'll just make a Mary, I'm going to call you Mary.
Okay.
Mary, you've been number 1 on my list for a year. And today you're number 1. Tomorrow morning, we get 15 applications. And they could be emergency, veteran, local, just emergency. And guess what? You're now number 16.
Yeah.
So remember one thing. Remember this. Emergency, veteran, local is the best preference to have. I didn't even get to Barbara. She's lived in Westford her whole life. She's planned very well. She's just a local, regular, non-emergency. And to get to her, we got to go through again. Local, veteran, emergency. Veteran, emergency. Emergency. Then, local veteran. Barbara is not a veteran. Then, after we go through all the local veterans, we go to veteran. After we get rid of all the veterans from that list, we can hit Barbara. And the reality is, and I'll be right with you, the reality is now, the state has gone to a statewide waiting list. Back in the good old day, 6 months ago or more, you could walk into the Westford Housing Authority and your name would be on the Westford Housing Authority list. The new program that was sponsored by the state legislature and approved by the state legislature requires every state public housing authority to be on a statewide waiting list. So any day, at any given time, an applicant can walk into a housing authority, or I didn't put these out for all of you because it's really not that exciting. You can go online. So at any point in time of the day, someone somewhere in the United States, can apply to state public housing and self-declare they're an emergency. And they can pick up to 3 communities they want to live in. Most of them check all. And when Lisa Larrabee or my office goes to pull a name from our waiting list, we could have anywhere from 50 to 100 applications that have declared that they are emergency. And we have to clear out every one of those before we can really move on to a real, I don't want to say this, an applicant that's been sitting there verified that we know. So it's a real challenge. Okay, I saw a couple questions in the audience and I want to give them a chance to ask.
You mentioned Mary, not veteran. What if she was married to a disabled veteran? Does that improve her status?
Mary is lucky. So the question is, if Mary was married to a veteran, guess what? Mary is lucky. Mary, if she was married to a veteran and she was married to him when he passed, she gets local veteran preference. But if Mary was divorced, and you tell us, Mary tells us, if she says, my husband was a veteran, we will ask for the DD 214, and Mary could get local veterans preference. If Mary comes in and says, I divorced that horrible man and he was a veteran, not that he was a horrible person, but divorced, you don't get the preference. There's one more? Or 2 more. Raise your hand.
Yes, what constitutes an emergency?
So what constitutes emergency? I touched upon it briefly. So it could be fire, let's say natural disaster. It could be natural disaster. It could be you're being abused. Your house could be foreclosed on for actions beyond your control. It's really, let's say this, which is not unheard of here. Not Barbara, not Mary. We're going to talk about Bill. Bill lives in a house in the Forge. All the bedrooms and the bathroom are on the 2nd floor. He's had a stroke. He can't use the stairs. The doctor says he can't go back to his home because he can't get to the bathroom, can't get to his bedroom. That would also be considered an emergency. And the emergencies are standard across the state. So where we might not see a lot of fires here, or abuse maybe, the waiting list is anyone from across the state could be claiming emergency. And if they check off Westford or Chelmsford, we have to screen them. And I'm not happy about this. This is not something that I'm happy about because we're mailing out, like for one vacancy, we could be sending out 200 updates, which is ridiculous. Okay, so one of the things I'll say is all too often, the people that come to the window looking for an application, they need housing today. A lot of us, especially seniors, my mother who's 83, it's not like 5 years ago I sat my mother down when she was, active driving, never home, out with friends, and I said to Mom, hey, you're healthy, you don't need it. Why don't you fill out a housing application? You might in like 7 to 10 years. Who really plans ahead to for state public housing? Well, if you can convince your mother, your sister, or yourself or your spouse, always apply early. It's better to apply early and turn it down than to wait until the last minute. So I could spend the whole hour talking to you about state public housing, how it works, what are the requirements, why someone got in over someone else. But I'd really like to touch upon the different types of affordable housing, because I always say, when there's an opportunity to add a tool to our toolbox, we're going to do it. So for many years, all we had was state public housing. And if we relied only upon state public housing, we'd really be in serious trouble today. Thankfully, at least with our office, working with Westford, we have other resources available to people looking for senior affordable housing. We have the Village at Mystery Spring. That is up on Tadnick Road, up on the hill. That is age 62 and over. And, important, it is not public housing. And the reason why I say it's not public housing, it's private housing, is it's not subject to the same waiting list that's statewide. When there is a private affordable housing development, like Village at Mystery Spring, or down the road when we hopefully see 7 new units that was recently funded on Carlisle Road. We're gonna have 7 new elderly units on Carlisle Road in Westford. Hopefully we're gonna see 18 new units on Littleton Road, the Helena Crocker residences. When these new private affordable developments are built, there is a waiting list held specific to that development. Now, there's pluses and there's minuses to that. Someone coming to my door or to the Westford Housing Authority door can say, "Hi, my mother needs affordable housing or needs some senior housing." We always gave them the state public housing waiting lists. Then pretty much for every other development that exists out there, you have to fill out a separate application. Challenging. But I think working with the senior center, working with the town, working with Lisa, our goal is to create a handout like what we passed out for Chelmsford. Maybe 4 columns with a list with the different locations, the different sites, the names, addresses, emails, and what the requirements are to live there. So I talked about the Village at Mystery Spring. It's hard to believe it's over. For me, someone asked me how old the building was, and I said 6 years old. And it's like, I think it's like 12 now. I mean, it's like I lose track of time in these 32 years. I didn't have hair, I know that. I didn't have white hair. So at least it's 6 years or more. When a senior moves into any of our housing, and the same goes for Westford, if your mother or father moves in or you move in, our goal is to work with the Council on Aging, Elder Services, any service provider to make sure that we keep you in your house as long as possible. So for Barbara and Mary, who get in eventually, our goal is to keep them there as long as possible. And some people may say it's not nice what I say, but I always say it. Some people say when they help a family, they'll graduate, they'll move on, own their own home, and get off of housing assistance. For me, when my seniors graduate, I always say they leave feet first. It's their last home. It's the place they can spend the rest of their life around friends in a safe place. So we work really hard to keep people in their housing, but what that means is, instead of someone spending a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, we're seeing many more residents live well into their 80s, 90s. One of my residents who's been with me 27 years just turned 100, and she's not stopping, so don't wait for her apartment. So it's almost like we're doing such a good job at helping some of our seniors. The waiting list for all of these developments is getting worse. So over at the Village at Mystery Spring, that waiting list can still look somewhere around 5 years. People will say to me, 5 years? I've heard people say 3 to 5 or 5 to 7. Sadly, I don't have a crystal ball. We get a vacancy when, I would love to say, they meet a special person and move to Florida. But we have a vacancy when something sad usually happens, and we don't know when that is. So our goal is to continue to work with Westford and the surrounding communities to increase the number of affordable senior housing units. We will never see more state public housing or any more federal public housing built. But we will see more affordable senior and family housing developed, similar to what was just, we just recently had a lottery for, I think it was,
Residences, let's see, the Two Robins apartment homes, Hanover, Westford, Hills.
okay. So there are a couple things I want to mention to you. I can talk to you about waiting lists. Conversations about waiting lists are horrible. So the takeaway from waiting lists is apply early, apply often. And I don't mean twice to state public housing, but apply to every development you may be interested in. You never know when something can change or something may happen. So then you should also pay really close attention, because when you see in the Lowell Sun or the Westford paper or the Chelmsford paper, or people are complaining or praising this new development that's going up somewhere, that's when you probably have your best chance of getting into something. So when lotteries take place, lotteries usually take place through someone like the Chelmsford Housing Authority, Westford Housing Authority, or a third party. It's incumbent upon us, the Council on Aging, the town, and partners, to make sure that we reach out to anyone that might be interested. What happens in a lottery? Well, we're required to advertise for about 3 weeks. You end up submitting an application, and just like playing bingo, we reach in pretty much, and we end up extracting the winners. How often do we usually have, 5 units, 7 units, 15 units available at one time? Not very often, and your chances are much greater to get in. After a lottery is held, it goes back to the waiting list for that specific development. I wish today was going to be a really happy, fun day, and we can talk about how everyone's going to get housing after today's meeting. But my goal is to make sure everyone understands, some of the steps that are needed. So if there are specific developments that you're interested in, now, can I just ask you to look at this one? This has the 4 little columns on it. And this one's specific to Chelmsford. And I say specific to Chelmsford housing because we have units that are beyond the borders of Chelmsford. So we have some family options. When I say family, that means 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and even some 3 bedrooms. Now, people will say to me, well, I'm 62. Can I still apply in a family development? Sure. Just don't complain if there's children. And it's fine. So anyone can apply for the 1 bedrooms. So in Chelmsford, we just finished the last few years, 116 new affordable units. Now, learning opportunity. Affordable housing can be 2 different things. It can be many things. But in this one place of 116 units, 100% of them are affordable. Now, at a minimum, that means the rents are lower than market rate. So instead of us asking $2,400 for a 2-bedroom, the rent for a 2-bedroom is closer to, let's say, $1,400. Now, Mary, who only earns $1,400 a month in Social Security, $1,400 is never going to work for her. But to some people, $1,400 is an affordable rent. Okay? At Chelmsford Woods, where there's 116 units, 100% are affordable, but about 24 of the units come with a subsidy, meaning you would pay 30% of your income. So when people talk about affordable housing, is it subsidized or unsubsidized? That's a good question to ask. So when you hear about affordable housing, we built 116 units of affordable housing. A little less than 100 are unsubsidized at a lower rent, and around 2 dozen are subsidized. So if someone's interested in living at Chelmsford Woods, they'd want to ask for an application for subsidized and maybe unsubsidized. So it's not just as easy saying I'm interested in affordable housing. You need to kind of give us a little more information. So we have Chelmsford Woods. We have 5 2-bedroom units we built in North Chelmsford. We have some scattered site family housing, which the waiting list is over 10 years, so it's not even worth applying. Seriously. We have the Elms in Harvard. If anyone is ever interested in living in Harvard, it's gorgeous, this place. It's in the middle of it's really beautiful. And this is not restricted to seniors. It's 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, and they're all subsidized. That waiting list, it's only 9 units, but I probably have a handful of people on that waiting list. So that's one that I would say, if you have a car and you don't mind traveling a little bit, that is a nice option to get your name into the Elms in Chelmsford. So next column I have is senior housing, age 55 and over. The Chelmsford Housing Authority, through our nonprofit Choice Inc., just bought a 16-unit foreclosed, it was going into foreclosure, subsidized development. We're going to get about $1.6 million to rehab it. In about a year's time, we should probably have about 8 vacancies. So you can get your name onto that waiting list. They're 1 bedrooms in Chelmsford, and they should have a subsidy at that time. I'm working on that. Elderly disabled, 60 and over, that's state public housing. So that's a list of the Chelmsford Housing Authority locations, and you can add to that Westford, Tadmik, etc. So let me say this. In the old days, when you would go to the Westford Housing Authority and apply, you would just be applying to Westford. If you apply for state public housing or have a current application with the Westford Housing Authority for state public housing, you can actually update that application and check off, I live in Chelmsford, maybe I live in Littleton, or any other community you'd like to be considered for. The last column is elderly housing options 62 and over. And these are our private developments that we develop through our nonprofit. And eventually, I hope to see Helena Crocker on that list. Not Helena Crocker, Helena Crocker. Helena Crocker Residences. The Choice Center, we have 37 units in North Chelmsford. North Village, we built 51 bedroom units. And then, of course, the Village at Mystery Spring. One more little sneak peek. We are currently in construction for over 55 new senior units in Shirley. It's not Westford, it's not Chelmsford, but we're in construction for over 50 units in Shirley that will have some subsidized and some unsubsidized. Brand new, gorgeous, affordable development. So I'll say this, it's horrible. The need for affordable housing is immense. But if you think you may be interested, keep asking questions. Go to the Westford Housing Authority, and if they only have one option for their own development or a couple other programs, don't be afraid to reach out to Chelmsford. If you're internet savvy and get online, I can share with the Council on Aging a couple websites you should look at on a regular basis. Some people may be shocked to hear that September 16th there was a lottery for some affordable units in Westford. You can actually sign up on a statewide mailing list, and you get weekly notifications for every affordable rental and homeownership option that comes up. So people who look at my LinkedIn profile will sometimes see I'm listing or I'm sharing with them units in Boston that should be $1 million unit for sale, and you can buy it for $169. Or a rental at the Mandarin that should be $12,000 a month, that's only $1,000. So there's a lot of resources out there, and sometimes, and sadly, we have to look beyond the borders of our own community. So what I wanted to share is, if there are people that are interested in the state public housing waiting lists, okay? The website is CHAMP. It's called CHAMP. Not everyone needs one of these. If you're already in public housing or you have no interest, this is how to apply online. If you already have an application, at the Westford Housing Authority or another housing authority, you can actually claim your application because it's now been put into the online system. And you can update your application with the communities you want to live in. So that was one of the handouts. CHAMP is now, you can apply online or update your application. I see a question in the back. I'm just going to wait till we get a microphone to you.
I don't have a problem speaking, but I just have a question about it. Would it behoove you to hire an attorney to fill out this like you would a disability form?
Not at all. No, because really it's not,
No advantage?
the question is, she says, is there any advantage to hiring an attorney to fill out that application? If you were going to rent an apartment or go to fill out a job application, I think an individual can complete that on their own. And if not, I know our office is always happy to sit down with you because quite frankly, there are many seniors, many individuals that will say, you know, this is a lot of information for me. We will sit down with you and go through the application step by step and help you fill that out. So another thing that I brought with me today, see, isn't this like, oh, it's like, I think we should be done now. We've already talked enough. I've overwhelmed all of you, but I have more. And I can come back again and do this. I had said to all of you before that Chelmsford had 700 vouchers, and we give local preference to Westford residents. And people can also apply online, or they can fill out, a hard copy application. I think I only made 25 of these, but you can always call our office or go to our website. And here is how you can apply online for Section 8. And there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about Section 8. And I'll just hand these to you. If anyone is interested in applying or how to apply for Section 8, that's the form there. So let me just say this to you. On Section 8, Section 8, as far as income limits. Okay, what are income limits? So anyone earning less as a two-person household under $43,050 a year can apply. Or as a single person under $37,700. I would say most of our seniors that we're seeing come through our door make less than $37,700. They can also apply for Section 8. And that Section 8 waiting list, depending upon your situation, typically could run 7 to 10 years. Horrible. But the Chelmsford Housing Authority continues to apply for every single opportunity that comes up. The federal government, believe it or not, even in this last few years, we've applied for 2 different rounds of new funding for Section 8. We've received new funding, and I'm waiting hopefully for another 75 vouchers to come in. So if you are a disabled individual who is single and not elderly, I may have 75 new vouchers that I'll be able to pull from my waiting list. So when I say the wait is 7 to 10 years, little star at the end. However, if you are non-elderly disabled, that wait could be significantly reduced, hopefully in the next 6 months if those vouchers come through. On our federal program, the Section 8 program, you can rent an apartment and we will help pick up the difference. So let's think about that for a minute. I said we built some units over at Chelmsford Woods. There could be other units in Westford, over on Littleton Road, owned by Princeton Properties. You could go rent a market rate unit or even affordable unit that's not subsidized and use a voucher there. And it would give you some options. Again, 7 to 10 years. If you're thinking you might need it down the road, listen. People that are we're making offers to people that have waited 7 years, and I'm so thankful they applied back then because they still need it today. Okay? Can I answer some questions? Okay, I see a hand here. Let's get a,
Excuse me, if you apply now, and you don't do anything since today, and your name is on the list, do you ever have to reapply or check on it, or is it permanent, your name will be on it?
okay, so if you apply, let's take this step by step. So if someone applied today on the state public housing waiting list, so let's just say Beverly, we use my mother's name, but it's not really her. Beverly applies today. About every year, we are required, so it could be a year, it could be 18 months, we're required to go and ask you to update your information. Okay? So if my mother Beverly gets it in the mail, opens it, sometimes she forgets, she puts it in her pile and doesn't respond, she will be closed out. My mother would be closed off the list. If within a few months she sees it and says, "Oh, I've been waiting all these years." Listen, most agencies, if it's within a reasonable amount of time, within a month, 45 days, not 2 years, within a reasonable amount of time, if you come in and you make a case, don't yell, don't scream, give us a situation, we will do our best to reopen your application if we're allowed to. If you had a medical emergency, if you were caring for someone, if you were sick, we will do our best to reinstate your application. But I will say, for the most part, when we update our list, people do respond because we plaster all over that. Failure to respond will have your name removed from this list, and most people know the value of returning that. But things do happen.
David, can you explain to the group how assets apply to all of this? Because I
Okay.
get asked that question a lot. They know the income, but not how assets, if they're selling a home or something.
Okay, so the question is, how do assets apply? So let's keep this specific to state public housing because it's really, let me do state public housing first. So Jeff.
Got to do something.
Yeah. So let's just say Jeff makes $24,000 a year. It's pretty straightforward. That's what he gets in Social Security. It's the gross amount. I don't care. I'm not saying I don't care. I do care. I'm not looking at how much is taken out for, your Medicare. I'm not looking at how much you're getting taken out for anything else, even if it's a private pension. We look at his gross income. Then he says to me, "David, I never told you. We've been friends for years, but I won on a scratch ticket. And I have $650,000 sitting in Enterprise Bank." But he still wants to be in our housing because it's great. And I say to Jeff, if it's sitting in a CD, we're going to only look at how much interest is being earned. So there's no asset limit. Like he could have $650,000 and still be eligible. So I go and I ask Jeff, I say, "Jeff, let me see your most recent statement." And it's earning a whopping 1%. Okay, math people, 1% of 650,000, $6,500 of interest. He has $24,000 of income. I add $6,500 to his income. He's a little over 30. He's well under our income limits. Now, I'm not going to use you. Let's say Jennifer, not any specific Jennifer. Jennifer has $1 million in an IRA. And Jennifer is 62 years old. And that money is sitting in an IRA. And it's just sitting there. And it's earning either dividends, income. There'll typically be an annual statement that will show what the income was for the year. We'll take that. So on the $1 million, it could range anywhere from whatever. It could be anything. But we'll take whatever it's actually generated and add that to their income. If for some reason that let's say Jennifer tells me she has $1 million and it's in her mattress because she doesn't trust the banks, I will have to take of a flat interest rate. It's like, I want to say it's 0.5% right now we use, or 0.75%. It's around 1% or lower, okay, I'll say that. And I will have to impute or estimate what that would earn if it was put into a savings account. Now, Jennifer turns 70 and a half. And this is something that happens all the time. Someone moves in with an IRA and it's not earning anything, then all of a sudden at 70 and a half, there's a minimum amount you have to have distributed. That becomes part of your income. So there's a million other scenarios I could talk to you about. Let's just say you own a house. Okay, I was going to get to that one. So I know it'd be kind of odd to say someone owns $1 million house, but it just makes my math. Okay, I could say $100,000 house, but that doesn't seem real either. Okay, so owning a house, free and clear. So when I say owning a house without a mortgage, we take the appraised value. Sometimes some housing authorities will take the assessed value. And again, they'll use that interest rate as if the money was in your mattress. Let's make it 1%. So let's say it's a $300,000 house. We'll apply 1% to it. We'll add $3,000 to your income. You move in, you sell your house. Okay, this is the next part. This is what people do all the time. And they think like they're doing something really sneaky, but it's not really that sneaky. They sell their house and they say, we don't have the money. We don't have it, we gave it away. Well, if you give your money away, whether it's $300,000 or anything of significance that doesn't really make sense. I mean, we usually catch things over $2,000, $4,000, $5,000. Anytime you give away assets for less than fair market value, so if you give away $1 million for nothing, or $10,000 for nothing, we'll count it for 2 years. Doesn't mean you're not eligible, we'll just keep it as part of your income. But I always tell my seniors, I know we want to be generous and give our money away to our children to try to protect it, but you never know when you're going to need it. So always try to keep something for yourself.
You have all this money in your savings account, and you decide you want to take a trip, and you take $4,000 out of your savings. This is just, I don't consider it income. I consider it part of my savings. Does the housing authority look at it that way?
Well, it depends on where the money comes out of. Savings account, a plain old savings account? Listen, if you went on a trip, God bless you, go. I'd say go more often. Spend all your money, go on a vacation. And just, if we ask you the question, which we're supposed to, it's really easy. You say, hi, David, I went on a great vacation. And here's my checking account statement, or my charge card, or here's something. We want you to spend. You can go and buy yourself a new car if you want a new car. Get hearing aids, get new teeth, get whatever you want, spend your money, it's yours. But if we see a significant decrease in your account, it raises a flag to us. Not because I'm Mr. Curious and want to know everything you do with your money, but every year the state comes in and looks at my folders. And if they pull your folder and they see this, they look at me and say, you didn't ask, and then I'll get in trouble.
But is it considered income?
No. From your savings account. We're talking a plain old savings account. There are times when withdrawals can be income. Yes. And this is the worst part. I mean, there are times when withdrawal from certain assets can be not savings accounts. No. Because that's the most simple thing. Because you could have an asset that's generating lots of income. I mean, it's growing, but you're not getting nothing's coming out of it. We're just charging 1%. So I'll say this to you. You have an IRA with all kinds of stocks, bonds, real estate investment trusts, and it's growing at a 20%. So there's some investments, like I know my 401k has gone up maybe 15%. If you have some investment types we're only charging you the 1% because you're not drawing on it. The minute you start drawing on an investment, there are some investments that we have to actually count as income. And this is confusing to sometimes my staff. It's super confusing and frustrating to my residents, for advocates, family members. But there are those times where if we have been charging you only 1% because the asset is a retirement, some sort of retirement tool, when you start receiving income from it, or you take a lump sum withdrawal from it, it's going to be charged as income. I see a woman in stripes who looks very familiar. Hello.
Yes, I just had a question to the conversation we were having earlier about the person with the IRA. And let's say that she applied for housing and she got accepted. And while she was there, her IRA, she became of age and her IRA started to receive income or started to distribute. Does this disqualify her from being a resident?
Okay. No. Okay. So let's say, let's go, we're going to use Jeff, because
Sure.
Jeff's right here and I can keep kind of hitting him. So Jeff has $24,000 a year in income. He then starts getting his mandatory IRA withdrawal. First of all, let's say this. Jeff, when he moved in, makes $24,000 a year. Just to make it easy, $24,000, that's $2,000 a month. He pays 30% of his $2,000 a month. So Jeff pays $600 a month to live in a public housing unit. He then starts getting a minimum distribution, let's say another $12,000 a year. That'd be a pretty sizable minimum distribution. So now instead of $2,000 a month, Jeff is living on $3,000 a month. His rent would go from $600 to $900 a month. In state public housing, you can be making up to 80% of area median income. What does that mean? That sheet I gave you on the back side, 80% for a one bedroom or one person household, $52,850. So I hate to say it, like I had a woman come in, she was 90 some odd years old, her husband died years ago. She was sitting on like investments of over $1 million and she was living on Social Security and she's never touched, she didn't even know how to touch it other than the check she got once a year. So she was eligible. I'm not saying there's no questions of whether it's right or wrong, but realistically, the sad part is, just to say this, and she was 94. She wanted to live somewhere safe. She wanted to live with other seniors. She wanted to know she could live somewhere and get services that she needed, and somewhere she knew she wouldn't be thrown out if she really got sick. And her options, at least in Chelmsford, she'd go live at Summer Place, which is a private rental for seniors. She could be paying anywhere from $7,000 to $9,000, $10,000 a month. But when you get sick, they may ask you to kindly leave. She was pretty independent. She drove still. She didn't want to go to an assisted living and pay $9,000 to $10,000 and have no stove to cook on. She wanted to have her independence as long as possible. So for her, the option was a good one, even if it was going to cost her a little more, like not a little more, but it was going to be potentially $1,000 a month to live in our housing. So everyone has a story. Have any burning questions from either of you?
I have lots of burning questions. I don't know that this is the forum, but this is great information. So.
Okay. This gentleman in the front, who wears his glasses like me.
This is a supply and demand question.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Chelmsford's population, what, 27,000 thereabouts?
No, I think we're close. I think I just turned myself off. Hello? Yeah, no, we're over, I think this is, I always said we're around 36, 37.
Oh, so you have a senior population of 10,000 families?
Probably more.
Probably more. And you have accommodations for maybe 330 families here on this page. How many of these 330 are occupied by folks that came from outside of Chelmsford?
So how many non-Chelmsfordians did we?
And on the
Most of
wait-
them
and
came
on the
from
waiting
Westford.
list
No,
also.
I'm kidding.
And on the waiting list also.
Okay, so the reality is, I don't know how many are. The reason why I'm not trying to be like sugarcoat and say, I'm not gonna tell you how many non-Chelmsfordians came in, because, you know, there are many people that will say you must be currently, you know, a Chelmsford resident. There are a couple of laws that we have to be very aware of. So if, let's say, I'm going to answer your question, but I'm going to take a little bit of a route. So we're looking at, let's say, a new project in Westford. And Westford says, we're going to let you build this new building, but we only want Westford people in it. Okay, what impact does it have on minorities, potentially? Because Westford is predominantly a non-minority community. So there could be some issues with civil rights. So typically, when there's a local preference, sometimes we are allowed to provide a local preference to 70% of the units that we have.
For the lottery.
No?
No?
No.
Forever.
Forever.
No.
However, sometimes we're not granted the local preference. And that's not, as a local community, we can say that's what we want. But if we're receiving state and federal funds, it's not always what can happen. But I will say, do you know how many people apply from Florida? And can you guess? They retired from Westford. They retired from Chelmsford. They bought a house with their wife or husband. They enjoyed themselves for 20 years. Less maybe. One of them passed away. Their kids are up here. They'll never live with their kids, nor will the kids ever want them to live there. And they want to come back. And realistically, we see that quite often. So it's one of those things where, you know, we have, it's not all the time, but we have people that have lived their whole life, they move away because they think they found love the second or third time around, and they're trying to come back. So I like having a balance of some local preference and some open pools. But quite frankly, when you're dealing with 300 units, I mean, we need a lot more. But the reality is if a developer came forward in Westford and proposed 2,000 senior units, affordable, is a real finite resource of funds to build it. So let me just talk to you for a minute about Helena Crocker residences, just to give you an idea. So just to give you a background of like what happens, like there's this huge need for senior housing, so why don't we just build more of it? Okay, well, if you want something to be affordable, I mean, you have to generate enough rent to pay the cost of construction, pay the operating costs, if you bought the land. So in order to build something that's affordable for me, for our organization, it runs like, so on my 18-unit project that we're proposing, we're getting the land at more than a couple $100,000. The cost of construction, because it's near some wetlands and it has septic, and it's the new building code. Lot of regulations. It could run us about all in, let's say all in, lawyers, architects, engineers, masonry, land, financing. It could run us at the end of the day $370,000 per unit all in. So if an 18-unit building is going to cost us, let's say, $5 million, if that $5 million isn't paid for through state funds or federal funds or local funds, I can never charge a truly affordable rent to the seniors that need to live there. So you go to the state. At the state, DHCD, they have funding rounds. 4 times a year, you can go knock on the door in the state and say, I have a great idea, I have a great project. And typically, For every project that's funded by the state every year, there's at least 3 to 5 that are not. And if that's happening every year, there's a huge backlog. So there is a waiting list, let's say, to get funding from the state and federal government. So there's not enough money to build affordable housing. Is there a waiting list for the vouchers? For the vouchers that we give out or to get them from the government? For me to get them? Okay, so Chelmsford Housing Authority, if there's any opportunity for funding, I want to be the first one on it, have the best application, I want to get funded every single time. Well, I had 2 funding rounds, and before that, it was 7 years without an opportunity to apply for vouchers from the federal government to get them.
Those vouchers are for the people who find an apartment or
It's people that have put their name on a waiting list.
yeah.
So Jeff is just the lucky guy next to me. So Jeff is planning for his retirement. So when he's 70 years old, he's going to want a Section 8 voucher. He could apply 10 years before, and he'll probably get one. When he gets that voucher, he can then find an apartment or stay in the one he's in. But it has to meet certain basic thresholds, like is it safe and sanitary per the state guidelines. If he's living in a 3-bedroom and he's a single guy, we're not going to be giving him a voucher for a 3-bedroom. So we apply every time. We usually get them every time. But if the last award I got was 25 vouchers. No. And the waiting list, I have over 3,000 people on the waiting list for the Section 8 vouchers. I didn't share with you some really horrible news. That state public housing waiting list that I told you about, that's statewide. Someone tell me how many people are on that waiting list. If someone guesses within 10,000, I think I have a 20 in my wallet. I'll give you a 20. Maybe not. But the statewide list, currently. Just take a guess for me.
12,000. Oh, God, no. Way more.
Okay, 12,000?
I was gonna say like 800,000.
Oh my God, no. Okay, so good, we'll meet in the middle. 170,000 people. 170,000 people are on the waiting list. We have 45,000 units. If all the units turned over every single year, we could house everyone in about 5 years about. But we have a turnover probably of like 5 to 10% at the most. Say that again, I'm sorry.
So those 100,000 people, that's where you're going to go to the emergency.
Emergency, veteran, local. So I keep saying this to you. It's like, it's so hard. Like you could walk in and talk to me today, and I don't mean to sound inappropriate to the viewers watching this, but we could have a really bad year, and we're losing residents left and right. And it seems like that list is moving. And the person who's number 4, who reads the obituary, this is the truth. They read the obituary and they know who's living. Or they visit their friend and they know so-and-so who live next door passed away. That means I must have moved up 1. And then I have to say, emergency, local, veteran. Instead of being number 3, you're 42 this week. And they think we're like cooking the books back there. But it's just, it's horrible. See, you said not to lead off with this like long waiting list, no hope. But I think I will share a couple things with you. Whenever we have the opportunity, we can complain about all this, but if there's an opportunity where someone is trying to develop something that's affordable and senior, so often all we get when I'm proposing something in Chelmsford or somewhere are every single neighbor who says, that tree, I know, I love trees. Those deer, I love deer and wild turkeys. It's like this balance of like, how can we all live in a community? So if it's a good location and you agree with it and you need it, come out to some of the public meetings and show support for something that you feel is something needed in your community, whether you live here, Chelmsford, or anywhere else. Because all too often, when we're proposing a project, all we hear about is that we're horrible, nasty people. And all I'm really trying to do is not say no to every senior that walks through my door and says, and they look at me and they say, David, we'll be dead. And I'm like, Mary, I know you're 85 years old, you're doing well. Keep going. 7 years. You can do it. I'm sorry. It's not, I mean, it's horrible. It's horrible. Okay, another question from the front.
Is it worth your time to promote accessory apartments? Does that move the dial at all?
Okay, so accessory units. This is the fun thing. So early on in the game, I was working as a peer-to-peer volunteer with Carlisle. So the town of Carlisle, I was working with them, Elizabeth Barnett, and we wanted to do accessory units in Carlisle. There was a real appetite for it. We got a bylaw passed, and there was going to be some benefits to the homeowner. So guess what? Let me say this to you. Allison?
Yes.
You own a home. You're going to build an accessory unit. You want to make it affordable. I mean, maybe affordable, maybe it will just be additional rental units. Well, if there's an affordability component to it, and the town's giving you money, and it's set up like through a program through the town, in Carlisle, what we found was, when Allison came forward and said, I want to build an accessory unit, and I want my best friend's mother to live there, we had to have a waiting list in Carlisle. So Allison didn't know who was going to be moving into her new accessory unit. So when it was implemented, we had zero, I was never called back. I don't know if it was my personality or me providing the guidance, but the reality is when you start under certain programs, you just can't pick the next person. And the unknown of who's going to live under the potentially the same roof as you is offered, it becomes a little less attractive. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Time's flying.
I know, people have a lot of questions. How much do Jeff and Rebecca have to add to what has been said?
Oh no, don't go anywhere. So a couple things. So we really wanted to prioritize David's time today. He's a great resource. We're at Town Hall every day. We left our contact information on those tables there. We have our cards. We can be reached anytime. So hit David with all your questions today. But what I will say is he's absolutely right. When there is a planning board or zoning board public hearing process, when people come in, even if they're not abutters to the application, even if you don't live right next door, those comments matter. And I think in one or two cases recently, I think it made a real difference. So your comments do matter. Even if you come in, politely say, state your name, record where you do live. I'm in favor of this application. I think this is good for the town. That can make a difference. So even if it isn't something right near you, it does matter. And you can always ask about, pending projects. There's another one that you hinted about on Carlisle Road that I didn't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about. That's another type.
That's the 7 unit?
Yes.
Okay, so, there's really, I'm going to say it. I really feel like there's sometimes you meet some developers and they genuinely, they really care. So a developer had come to me, I'm going to say maybe 3 years ago, and said, I'm doing some market rate units. I'm going to do something affordable. Can we figure out what we can do? What do you need for affordable? What do you see as the need? And I said, how much land do we have? How much space do we have? How can we maximize the resources? After 2 years of talking, it finally went to planning or
zoning board,
one of the boards. And it got passed, and it came with 7 units. And we're going to be managing 7 new affordable units. And it's going to be supportive housing. And what the heck does that mean, supportive housing? That means, so even right now, remember those 3 things I said? So if you walked into the Westford Housing Authority today as a Westford resident and you're in an emergency, I have to do what first? Emergencies. Local veteran, so you might get in right away. But if you're not, if we have a lot of emergency local veterans and you're just emergency local, you may have to wait a little while. We're creating 7 new units that are going to be hopefully more available for people. They're going to be oversized studios, right? Oversized studios, your own bathroom, your own little kitchenette, and we're going to have some services there. because the 85-year-old senior who can't wait 7 years, but she needs some help, she can't stay in her house, she may end up in a nursing home, she doesn't want to go there, it's going to be another tool in our toolbox. So it's 7 new units of senior supportive housing. They're targeted at seniors who need subsidized rental units. And we're going to be providing services there for them. What do you mean by services? Someone came in and said, I'm a social worker, I know what this is, there's going to be ambulances in and out, this is going to be a real disturbance to my neighborhood, I don't want this 7-unit building in there.
I don't think it was a social worker that said that.
You're right, it wasn't a social. No, she said that she knows social workers.
Yeah.
You're right, that wasn't. She worked with social workers and she knew this.
I just wanted to correct the record.
Yeah, okay. You're right, it wasn't. I love my social workers. Sorry about that. So reality is no. It's like, do you know how many seniors I have that as long as they have some structure and there's someone to check on them and they're getting their meals, and they're going to be fine living in the community and there's not going to be ambulances coming and going. So in order for him to do those 7 units, with each having their own bathroom and own kitchen, and it was much more than what a normal or a regular developer would do, we actually helped him apply to the state. I said for every 1 application, there were 3 to 5 that are denied. We partnered with him, we went in for the application, and he won on the first round. And that's a big win. And I don't even know if that's been announced. So if you're watching at home, act surprised when you hear about it in the paper. And we got some funding from the Westford Affordable Housing Trust. And so this is reality. We're going to have 7 more units in our toolbox, which might be able to help more people. Helena Crocker, we're going to town meeting and looking for $1.5 million in community preservation funds. Because as far as community preservation funds that come out of your tax bill, get matched with the state, we're looking for additional resources to build these 18 new units. So that's going to be coming up in October.
28th.
October 28th. Town meeting. In the back. The lovely woman in salmon. You're allowed?
Where are the Helena Crocker units going to be built?
They're going to be built on not too far from Tadmick Road. So Tadmick Road and Littleton Road. Neshoba Pizza.
Right next door.
Right next door to Neshoba Pizza.
What's going in on Carlisle Road?
Carlisle Road is, they're age restricted. Duplexes are single-family freestanding units, and there's currently a daycare, or there was a daycare there. That building's going to be replaced with a 7-unit supportive housing senior program that we're going to manage. You're welcome. I'd house all of you tomorrow if I could. Most of you I seem to like, so that would be great. We'd have fun.
These private developer situations that you've been talking about, are these what's called 40B?
So this is the thing, when we talk about 40B, do you know what I use to build? I use 40B. So 40B could be a good developer, it could be a not so nice developer. So it depends. 40Bs have to have an affordable component. So what I always say is, for me, in my experience, when a 40B comes forward, I like to engage and take a deep dive, like really ask lots of questions, not so much about how many cars are going to be coming in and out. I like to sit down and say, okay, tell me about your affordable part. Is it going to be affordable with a small a and only one F? Or is it going to be all capitals? So in Chelmsford, we've had 2 new developments that got permitted. And we actually negotiated the affordability. And they voluntarily did it because we gave it was friendly, it was a friendly 40B. So the affordable rents, let's say, for a 1-bedroom, we just had them in Chelmsford, the 1-bedroom's like 800 something without a subsidy. And they're gorgeous. So I would say 40B, it can be a dirty word. 40B, they have to do affordable housing. And then in Westford, this is where I'm not the expert and they are. In Westford, there are ways to develop affordable housing outside of the 40B process where you can negotiate certain terms. Is that correct or not?
That is true. We have a couple of mechanisms in our zoning bylaw that allow for higher density developments, but they do require an affordable housing component. You may remember things such as Abbott Mill. That's a mill conversion overlay district. There's also other opportunities for, they're called flexible developments. Juniper Hill, that's another one where they incorporated 2 affordable units for habitat. So,
Wow, we're wrapping up soon, so I have this on my calendar till 3 o'clock. So, and I just want to point out, on that handout, it says affordable housing options, that backside. You know, if you're gonna call the housing authority, like later on today or tomorrow, and say, hi, I saw David in Westford, I want to talk to him. The chances of my staff letting you through to me is probably pretty small, because I'm a little busy. We used to have, when I was 16 years old, we had 2 employees. We have 38 employees now. From around 100 units, we manage about 1,400 units. It's awesome. But like the David that used to be able to be like at the window all the time, I'm usually in the back, screaming. Not at anyone, just at the world. So on the back is a list of contact names, there's phone numbers, extensions, and email addresses. So, okay, the woman with stripes. Now I remember where I know you're from, where I've seen you. Yes.
Yeah, my question it relates to the Chapter 40B situations. If Westford has already exceeded the 10% requirement, so if you do a 40B, how does that change what you can do? Are there any allowances or other things or more flexibility that you're given if, if you've already exceeded the 10%?
Okay, so I'll say this to you. So if I said to you, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. So 10% is not a cap. 10% is the minimum. So in Chelmsford, I can say this, I'll say it. So in Chelmsford, we're pretty much where we need to be. And really, we don't really have to approve anything. But recently, over on where the Glenview used to be, across the street is UMass West Campus. 34 acres, 20 acres, or 21 acres are buildable. I'm working with that developer to hopefully build, I would love to see 300 to 400 new senior units built, with 100 being affordable for seniors. Would that be under an overlay? Well, there's no overlay there right now. Could it be a 40B? Yes. Do we have to approve any 40Bs? No. But if it's a really good project, the town might want to move forward with it. So 40Bs can still happen. But if you're a 40B developer and you're coming in with a project that's in a really contentious location and you're not really doing much for the community and you're not going to have much support, I probably wouldn't take the risk. But if it's a good project with local support and it makes sense, maybe you do go forward. So I want to thank all of you for coming out today, and it was a pleasure meeting all of you, and hopefully you'll be a resident soon somewhere.